if you're planning a virtual wedding or a hybrid one, there are some additional planning details and steps you'll need to take and think through. Today, we're continuing our virtual wedding series and talking about some important logistics information and tips you're going to need to make sure your virtual wedding goes off without a hitch. Hi there, I'm Jamie Chang, your destination wedding planning guru and designer of Joy and Mangomee's events, the creator of Passport to Joy, the step-by-step online wedding planning course for couples, and the founder of Let's I Do This, intimate and virtual weddings in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I share real and honest and useful wedding planning tips, tricks, and advice you can use to help make planning your wedding easier and more joyful, so you can create a wedding you love. Because let's face it, wedding planning isn't always very easy or happy. In fact, it can be downright painful, and nobody wants that. So we're bringing the joy back to wedding planning. Are you ready? All right, so let's do this. Let's dive in. Now, today we're continuing our virtual wedding series, and we're talking about something a little bit different. Not about how to make it special, but about some of the nitty-gritty details. By the way, if you haven't checked out our other videos in our virtual wedding series, you definitely should, and hit subscribe so you can get access to all the new ones. Now, there are a lot of details. There are a lot of nitty-gritty details that you'll need to plan for in order to make sure you have a smooth virtual wedding, because it does operate a little bit differently, right? It operates a little bit differently than sort of a quote-unquote normal wedding. And there are, elements that you wouldn't necessarily have to think about or plan for or worry about if you were planning a normal wedding. And we want to make sure you have an amazing virtual wedding. So the question is, how do you do that? Now, in our last video, we did talk about the tech, so you should definitely check that out if you haven't. But today we're going to be talking about something else that's also really important, the logistics. Now, logistics are, one of those things that's really kind of make or break. It's something that can make or break your wedding, because logistics are like the glue. The glue that sort of holds all the pieces of your wedding together. And without it, things can really just kind of fall apart. And, we don't want that. So, with a virtual wedding, logistics definitely look a little different and operate a little different than a normal wedding, but they're still super duper important. And, while there are a lot of logistics we could talk about, we're going to talk about sort of the major pieces today that you'll want to have in place in order to have a awesome virtual wedding. All right, so let's start with the first. And the first is communication. Now, communication is always super duper important when it comes to a wedding, any wedding, right? And when it's a virtual one, though, it's almost more important. And when I talk about communication here, I'm talking about guest communication. Because while vendor communication is also super duper important, it doesn't change so much when it comes to your virtual wedding, but your guest communication definitely does. And the reason is because, you're not physically with your guests at your wedding, right? And so you can't, show them what to do or tell them what to do or push them all into a room together. It's a little different, right? Everyone's virtual. So you need really clear instructions. And this comes in the form of sort of 3 different items. Now, the first is your invitation. Yes, you still need to invite your guests to your virtual wedding. Otherwise, they won't know when to show up. But also, like a normal wedding, you also want to get an RSVP. Now, you might be thinking, why do I need an RSVP for a virtual wedding? And, it's because you want to know who's coming. And if you're setting up tables or playing games or sending gifts, it's going to be really important to know who's actually going to be attending. Now, if you're not doing any of those things and say only streaming one way, then the RSVP doesn't matter quite as much. The invite still matters, but not the RSVP. By the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about streaming one way, you definitely should check out our last video around tech. Okay, Now, back to the invite. So the invite can obviously be sort of a normal physical paper invite, but it could also be electronic. It doesn't really matter as much for a virtual wedding. It just depends on what you like and how formal you want it to be and how much time you actually have, because obviously with a physical invite, you need time to, pick it, order it, mail it, all those things. But you absolutely, this is the thing that's really important about the invite, besides obviously inviting your guests, is that you need to have your wedding website link on there. Absolutely need to have that, because item number 2 is a wedding website. Now, wedding websites are obviously, pretty standard nowadays as a way to sort of share information about your wedding. But with a virtual wedding, your website is also kind of an instruction guide, is the way I would think about it. So think of it like, those little pamphlets that you get when you buy a blender or a vacuum cleaner or an air purifier. You open it up and it tells you what to do with, step-by-step instructions. And you need that for your virtual wedding so your guests know exactly, what they need to do. So where they're supposed to go and how to sign in and how to sign up, how to log on, if they need to adjust settings or issues they might face or troubleshooting information or maybe the multiple links that they need in order to attend your wedding. You want to give them a step-by-step guide to essentially attending your wedding, because it can be really tricky for sort of the non-tech person like grandma or your parents or aunts and uncles, right? So you want to really make it easy. You want to make it easy for them so that it's fun and they don't get frustrated. And you want to be able to walk them through, the steps they need to take on your website. And then just give them tips to just make it all that much easier. Now, once they actually arrive to your wedding, to your virtual wedding, there might still be some problems, right? And that's when you need item number 3, and that's your host. Now, you need to have a person who is your dedicated host, somebody who greets people and answers questions and helps people that are having maybe some trouble. This person, gives instructions and tells guests what happens next and what they can do. Your host really kind of is a host and an emcee and a tech support person, kind of all in one. And they are crucial, super crucial to making sure your virtual wedding goes smoothly. Okay, so let's recap here. We talked about communication and how important it is, and the 3 items you need: invite, website, host. All right, now let's talk about your schedule. Now, your virtual wedding may, look a lot or very similar to, say, a quote-unquote normal wedding in a lot of ways. It may have similar elements or all the same elements that you would normally have. But there will definitely be at least a few things that are different. And you need to plan it a little differently because your virtual wedding just operates a little differently. It's not in person. So you have to think about the flow and activities you plan on, having so that it's fun and not boring for your guests, because nobody wants boring, right? And you want to think about it. You want to think about your schedule and about what's happening in terms of what is interesting and or interactive. So let's do a couple examples here. So, your ceremony is obviously interesting, right? But watching you eat, not so interesting. A game or, say, mingling with different groups of people at cocktail tables is interactive, but a 20-minute toast, isn't. Well, if we're being honest, right, a 20-minute toast isn't very interactive or interesting, whether you're having a virtual wedding or not. kind of never that interesting. But that's aside. So you're going to want to create, your schedule based on what's happening and the interesting and or interactive activities that you plan on having. Now, outside of those activities, where your guests are, engaged with you, you also need to plan for some downtime. Because, when you transition between things, there will inevitably be some downtime. And you don't want to lose your guests during this time. You want to keep them engaged. You want your wedding to be fun. And so you're going to want to include some activities for that downtime that guests, can do on their own without you. So this is when things like a virtual photo booth are really fun, or, showing maybe a pre-recorded video or a slideshow, or maybe even playing a sort of non-interactive game. Now, you want your guests, to have a good time, right? You want them to have fun. And so creating a schedule and activities that make it fun and keep them, engaged and entertained is super important. Which sort of leads me to the last major logistic that you're going to want to think about, and that's gifts. Now, we've talked about guest gifts in a previous video and why they're a good idea, which you should check out. But what I want to talk about today is the logistics side of gifts. Now, really, there are two ways that you can send a gift, right? You can send it in the mail, or it can get delivered. Now, depending on what you're sending and where you're sending it to, you may end up having a combo of, these types of gifts. Regardless of the type of gift you're sending or the route in which you're sending it, how you're sending it, it's important to remember that you need lead time. You need lead time. You need time to gather things or order things. You need time to put things together if you're DIYing it, You need time to ship it so that it arrives on time, or you need time to deliver it so that it will get there without you feeling stressed. Or you need time for the company that you're working with to create the gift, put it together, send it out, or deliver it. Gifts just can't be done on sort of a whim. So, unless you're only sending to a couple of people, and when I say a couple of people, I mean literally kind of a couple of people, you need at least a couple of weeks in order to have the time to do everything, to have the lead time. But ideally, you want to give yourself about a month if you can, because it'll just be much less stressful if you have more time. All right, so here's a little recap on logistics. Logistics are the glue, super duper important. And for your virtual wedding, you're going to need good communication. You're going to need a well thought out schedule and lead time for gifts. Now, I want to end this video by just making a really important reminder that this is also a great time to utilize the pros for help. Having a professional handle the logistics for you, whether that's as a host or helping you with gifts or helping you create that flow and schedule and activities, it's just going to make it a lot easier for you and less stressful. So I would definitely think about it, not even look into it, so that you at least know what you're getting into and also what your options are. All right? If you enjoyed today's video, please like it, give us some thumbs up. You can check out our other videos for even more wedding planning tips, and please hit subscribe so you get access to all the new ones. If you're in the Bay Area, come and check out Let's I Do This for our intimate and virtual wedding packages. We can definitely help you with logistics. And if you're looking for help through the entire wedding planning process, including having access to a personal wedding advisor, check out Passport to Joy, my online course. You can find all the links below. Because you deserve to enjoy your engagement, no matter what your budget is, and even in the middle of a pandemic. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye.